What's going on, guys and gals? Kendall here with Renos for Pros and Joes, and this video has a two-part title. Part one is I broke my $200 drill, and part two is the best drill for 6-inch hole saw. So as you can probably determine from the title, we're going to cover two different things, but they are both related and deal with the same scenario. Welcome back. If you're a subscriber or you've viewed my videos before, if you're new, consider subscribing to the channel. On this channel, we cover all things real estate and property related to improvements. That is going to be remodeling, renovation, property upgrades, maintenance, and repairs. So if you're interested in things like that, consider subscribing to the channel. Also cover a variety of topics within that realm. So some of the videos are going to be how-tos, some things are going to be learn from my mistakes, i.e. what not to do, and other videos are going to have more of a entertainment flair to them and kind of give you a day in the life, and some of those are going to be series that are going to walk you through a phase by phase of a particular project. That may be a kitchen remodel, a bathroom remodel, or something like that, or some other project that is related to improvement, remodeling, renovation, repair, maintenance, one of those things. So in any case, glad to have you. Let's jump into this video. So I was recently working on a project where I was cutting 6-inch holes in the ceiling. And I've been using my Milwaukee M18 drill, which is a $200 drill. I'll have a link to that drill in the description box below in case you guys want to make sure that I am not making a clickbait title. It's down there for you to check out. In any case, I've had this drill for a little bit over a year and a half now, and I haven't had any problems out of it, and I've done a lot of different things with it, and it's a relatively heavy-duty drill. It is a hammer drill, so it's got some additional features to it besides just being able to drill regular holes and things like that. In any case, I've actually used this drill before to cut holes for recessed lighting before in the past on remodel jobs, and I didn't have any problems out of it to speak of that I couldn't kind of work through. However, I went back to use the same drill again and experienced some issues. So before we go any further, let me at least show you what a 6-inch cutout hole looks like. It's pretty large, as you can see. So as I was saying, the first time I used this to cut holes for can lights, I didn't have many issues with the drill. It took a little bit of getting used to. And so this is the second time I'm using it, and I got 4 or 5 holes in, and the motor on the drill burnt up. So this is the drill right here in question, and I will go ahead and push the trigger just so that you can hear that it's burned up, and you'll see it kind of try to inch forward, and then it will kind of seize up. So the light still comes on, but it's definitely burnt up. So in any case, that one's done. So let me go back to the first time I used it. It was very obvious in cutting holes with this drill that sorry guys, I'm gonna have to take frequent breaks because it's really windy out here today. So in any case, the first time that I used this drill, I didn't have very many issues with it. I cut the holes pretty well, and I just kind of had to get used to it. But there was one thing that I did notice, which was that the drill had a major issue with slowing down after the hole was cut. So once I released my finger from the trigger of the drill, its ability to stop the spinning of the 6-inch hole saw, it seemed to really stress and strain the drill, and it made a really bad noise. But I kept using it because I didn't have another alternative to use at the time. So I kept using the drill, and I cut out all my holes, and there was no issues after that. So the next time that I used this drill, I was doing a very similar project. However, the thickness of what I was cutting through was much more substantial. And so I only got maybe 4 holes in, and then the drill just burnt up. And so as I began to do some additional research and try to figure out what was the ideal drill for cutting these type of holes, I realized that there was not a lot of information about that really gave a very clear picture on what your options were. So as a point of reference, the drill that I have is a good drill. This is not an entry-level drill. This is like I would consider it to be a pretty nice contractor grade drill. So So this drill can do pretty much anything that you would be doing on a remodel project within a relatively wide scope. So you can obviously drill holes in wood, you can drill holes in steel, you can change out bits and drill holes in concrete. You can use hole saws to cut through 2x4s and things like that. However, the catch is the hole saw has to be of a certain size, okay? And so let me quickly show you what most hole saws look like and most drill bits look like. So most people are going to be using drill bits that look like this, okay? So this is a good representation of the size drill bits that most people are going to be using. Some are going to be a little bit thicker than this, some a little bit smaller, but within this range. And also, let me also show you what the hole saws look like. So this is a size hole saw that you would use to cut out a doorknob hole. So this is 2 1/8 inch hole saw, and this is well within the abilities of this drill. Cuts through the holes with no problem, regardless if it's a hollow core door or it is a door that has a solid core. So as you move up into more involved projects, the tools and things that you need to use are going to get bigger and more heavy duty. And so let me quickly show you what a larger bit looks like that probably most entry-level drills will not push. So this is a 17.5 inch, 1 inch hole drill bit. And this size bit is going to be a bit that most of your entry-level drills are not going to push. However, this drill that just burnt up, the $200 drill, would drive this no problem. But let me show you the difference between this and our standard size looking bits. So this is in the realm of a standard bit, and this is something that is more involved. This is the type of bit that you would use if you were going to be drilling through plates for electrical wire and things like that on a renovation or a new construction. But this is a commonly sized used bit by electricians and tradesmen like that. So I'm gonna toss that to the side, put that back in my pocket. So back to my hole saw. This is a decent size hole saw here as 2 1/8. There's plenty of hole saws that are smaller than this. However, when you move up to a 6 inch hole saw, it's not what you're thinking if you haven't seen one before. The 6 inch hole saw is much larger than just 3 times bigger than this hole saw. And let me quickly show you what it looks like. Okay, so this is your 2 1/8 hole saw. This is a 6 inch hole saw. It is much, much, much bigger. This has got a lot more weight to it, and it builds up a lot more force when it starts spinning at a high rate of speed. So these are what the larger or difference in hole saws looks like from 2 1/8 to 6 inch. This as a point of reference. So while this drill can turn the 2 1/8 very easily, it really struggled with this 6 inch bit. So it did cut the holes, but eventually it burnt up. One of the things that caused this drill to burn up, in my opinion, is its inability to stop the drill once you disengaged pulling down the trigger. It just didn't have the power to stop the drill, and I believe it continued to spin, and that ultimately helped to shorten the lifespan of this drill. Another element that makes this drill difficult to use for using a 6 inch hole saw is the fact that this drill turns at a very high rate of speed, which makes it harder to control this 6 inch hole saw, even if you've got a pilot hole in place already, which I always do. And so it's common for this thing to have to fight with it to try to hold it in the hole and to hold it straight, because as this thing spins, it has a lot more force and it's much easier to get away from you than a smaller hole saw. So that's another thing to have to keep in mind when you're trying to use a drill like this. In doing additional research, I found that there are more heavy-duty drills that you can use to cut even larger holes than the doorknob hole and things like that. However, what I realized is even those have a limit on them. So as you move up higher in tools, there are drills that are specifically designed to cut holes for hole saws, and larger hole size to be exact. And even the next step or two up above a drill like this still isn't designed to use a 6-inch hole saw like this, right? That's another thing to keep in mind. So the tool that you're going to need to use is going to be far bigger, and you're typically going to end up wanting to rent this unless you are in the trades of having to cut these holes on a regular basis. And if you are, then you may want to try to track one down or something very similar to it. And so here it is. I call this one the Big Mac Daddy. So this is it, guys. This is one of the most powerful handheld drills out there. This drill weighs about 22 pounds, and it has got some major weight to it. Very solid construction. And initially, when I changed over to using this drill, I was concerned that it was going to be too heavy and it was going to make a problem for me to cut the holes with. However, once I got started, it became pretty clear to me that this is what I should have been using all along. And the difference is the way that the drill works is that this drill turns very slowly and has very high levels of low-end torque, which means it can cut the holes even if it's moving at a very slow rate of speed. This drill here, the $200 drill, has to put forth more effort from the outset and has to spin at a faster rate in order to generate the force to be able to cut through the ceilings or walls, whatever you're trying to cut through. And that requirement for it to spin faster makes it harder to control. And once the drill hole saw gets to the size of 6 inches or in that range, it becomes very unruly to control and keep straight and keep in the pilot hole that you've cut, and to make sure that you don't mess up the material that you're cutting through. And so I'm gonna quickly plug these in so that you can see the difference in how they spin. Obviously, my $200 drill is burnt up. So I do have a quoted drill that works in a very similar fashion so that you can see ultimately the speed at which the drill turns. Okay, so this is what I would consider to be a standard drill, and they typically run the same. They have a forward and reverse, and when you pull down on the trigger, the drill spins, and as you pull harder, the drill spins faster until it reaches its maximum RPMs. So I can turn it like this slowly, and the drill spins slowly. But ultimately, if you're going to be cutting something like a hole with a hole saw, the larger hole saw gets, the more difficult it's going to be able to cut without trying to have to apply pressure and things like that to make it spin. So as you pull the trigger further, you can see that it's speeding up. So it's got more momentum. Obviously, it's going to be easier for it to cut holes. I speed up even more. Same thing. Speed up, speed up, speed up. Okay, so you saw that. So even though this is a corded version, this functions virtually the same way as the drill that burnt up. Now I'm going to show you how the big boy functions. All right, so now this drill doesn't have nearly the sensitivity when you pull the trigger down, and it does not have a super high rate of speed. So when So that's as fast as this drill turns. But it creates a much more controlled process for cutting holes because the drill doesn't have to take off. It does not jerk when you pull the trigger at all. No matter how. So this drill is essentially on and off. So we can see that it will cut. I have to get my chuck to tighten this down. Well, you can see that this will cut holes with this. As you see it slow down there, it brings it brings the hole saw to a gradual stop. Now with the other drill, the problem was when you stop and take your hand off the trigger like I just did with this one, it doesn't have the same ability to slowly bring it to a stop. So it spins out of control, and you can hear kind of a, I don't want to say binding sound, but it's almost like the drill is fighting to stop it, and it's not doing a good job of it. And it feels like almost like it's stripping something inside of the drill. So those are the two main differences. This drill does have a handle on here, and so basically my cutting motion was like this. There's some other drill options that you can use, but you want to make sure that the drill that you're using is going to be rated to cut these holes. Drills like this can also be used for functions such as mixing mud and also drilling with larger drill bits than the one I showed you that was 17.5 inches. You can cut through steel and things like that. So there's a lot more options than things that you can do with a bigger drill like this. But the key to take away from this video, regardless of whether or not you are a DIYer or you're a hobbyist or even if you're a contractor, is to pay attention and realize the limits of the tools that you have, because regardless of whether or not you've got an entry-level tool, you've got a contractor grade tool, or you've got something that's a step above that, or a more specialized tool, I should say, you have to know where the limits lie with regards to your tools. And one thing that I also found out in doing additional research with different types of drills for cutting holes and things like that, it's typically buried within the specs, and you have to go and dig it out and search it out to figure out the maximum hole saw circumference that you can use on that drill. And so that is something that I didn't discover until I was looking at the larger, more powerful hole saw drills, which are still less powerful than this. And I saw that they capped out somewhere around the 4-inch range. So they didn't recommend you trying to cut holes more than 4 inches, and some of them were a little bit less than that, 3.5 inches and things like that. And so obviously a 6-inch hole saw is going to be in a completely different animal. And if you're going to be doing 1 or 2 holes, that's fine. But if you're going to be doing a gazillion holes or doing this as a regular practice, then you're probably going to want to eventually invest in something or take the time to go and rent a tool that is going to be more capable of creating these holes on a consistent basis without burning up the tool and without making it too difficult to actually cut the holes through whatever you're trying to cut through. So, as I said before, if you're considering doing a project where you're going to have to cut 6-inch holes, and you're going to be cutting through something that's relatively substantial, which is basically anything besides a single layer of drywall, you may want to look at using a different hole saw. And in some instances, even if you are just cutting through drywall, you still may want something that's going to be a little bit more robust than that, particularly if you're going to be doing that on an ongoing basis. As I said before, the $200 drill worked fine, and I was able to cut a total of 20 holes before it burnt up. So after the first project, I went ahead and used it again for a second one. Now, as I said before, in the second project, the holes that I was cutting were much thicker, probably 5 or 6 or 8 times thicker than the disc that I showed you before. So if you look at this disc from the side of that profile there, what I was cutting through was probably about like this. And so when I started the new project, I made it through about 5 holes in there before the drill burnt up. So that's really a total of like 21. So in any case, guys, hopefully you guys found this video informative. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you guys on the next one.